Hello, all this month I am profiling every day another BABW, badass black woman from history. And today, Anna Julia Cooper. Here's a photo of her when she was a young woman. I'm reminded when I talk about all of these incredible black women of something that Toni Morrison said about black women, the black woman. She said, she had nothing to fall back on. Not maleness, not whiteness, not ladyhood, not anything. And out of the profound desolation of her reality, she may well have invented herself. And that is true of so many of these women, especially true of Anna Julia Cooper. She was enslaved at birth. And her mother was a domestic servant for the Haywoods in Raleigh, North Carolina, a very powerful family that helped found the University of North Carolina. After emancipation, when she was 9 years old, she got a scholarship to study at St. Augustine's Normal School. It was founded by the Episcopalians. Cooper said about her mother, "My mother was a slave and the finest woman I have ever known. Presumably my father was her master. If so, I owe him not a sou, and she was always too modest and shamefaced ever to mention him." Anna was at St. Augustine's for 14 years altogether. She learned Latin, French, Greek, math, science. Women at the time were only allowed to take what was the ladies' course, which was focused on just preparing them to teach in school. Anna fought for the right to take the same course as the men, and she won. After she graduated, she became an instructor there at St. Augustine. She was teaching the classics, history, English, and music. Then she went on to Oberlin College, again insisting and fighting for the right to take the same course as the men. She graduated there in 1884. Then she got a master's in mathematics in 1888, one of the first two black women to earn a master's degree. The other one was Mary Church Terrell. And she then published an essay on why women should study classical literature. By the way, she made that argument more than a decade before W.E.B. Du Bois made a similar argument, except he was arguing that black men should study classics, and he did that in The Souls of Black Folks. Anna Julia Cooper did it a decade earlier. In 1900, she went to the UK. She was there for the first ever Pan-African Conference and was one of only two women invited to speak there. She came back to D.C. She helped found the Colored Women's League. All throughout her life, she was involved in a lot of different organizations and a lot of political movements. But we're going to focus on her teaching today. She started the Colored Women's League along with Mary Church Terrell, Ida B. Wells, Charlotte Grimke, and a bunch of others. And she also started teaching at M Street High School. After a few years, she was made the principal of M Street. And people described her as having a messianic zeal to transform her students' minds and hearts. Under her guidance, the school became one of the only black high schools to be accredited by Harvard. During her tenure, she secured dozens of college scholarships and helped almost 30 young people get into Harvard, Brown, Amherst, Radcliffe, Cornell, Yale, lots of others. While she was there, she wrote the book A Voice from the South by a Black Woman of the South. I just want to remind you that the entire literary tradition in the U.S., almost the entire literary tradition, was founded, for African Americans at least, was founded by women. We talked about the first playwright to be published, Phyllis Wheatley, and Plato was the first African American of either gender to publish a book of essays. Harriet Wilson was the first to publish a novel in the U.S. That was 1859. In that book, we're going to read a few of the things she said in there. She said, "I am my sister's keeper. Should be the hearty response of every man and woman of the race, and this conviction should purify and exalt the narrow, selfish, and petty personal aims of life into a noble and sacred purpose." She also talked about the Klan, the KKK, in that book. She said, "Bullies are always cowards at heart and may be credited with a petty, safe instinct in scenting their prey. Besides, society, where it is not exactly said to its dogs, 'Sick him,' has at least engaged to be looking in another direction or studying the rivers on Mars. It is not of the dogs and their doings, but of society holding the leash that I shall speak." She talked quite a bit about how American politics was held hostage to racists in the South. She said, "Southern influence, Southern ideas, and Southern ideals have from the very beginning even up to the present day, dictated to and domineered over the brain and sinew of this nation. But she didn't let Northerners off the hook. She also wrote this: "The Southerner is not a cold-blooded villain. Those of us who have studied the genus in its native habitat can testify that his impulses are generous and kindly, and that while the South presents a solid phalanx of iron resistance to the Negro's advancement, still as individuals to individuals, they are warm-hearted and often even tender. And just here is the difference between the Southerner and his more philosophical, less sentimental Northern brother. The latter, in an abstract metaphysical way, rather wants you to have all the rights that belong to you. He thinks it better for the country, better for him, that justice, universal justice, be done. But he doesn't care to have the blacks in the concrete too near him. He doesn't know them and doesn't want to know them. He really can't understand how the Southerner could have let those little cubs get so close to him as they did in the old days, nursing from the same bottle and feeding from the same breast." Now, while she was the principal at M Street High School, she became a target for the white men who were running the school district, mostly because she insisted on teaching college prep, and they wanted her to teach trades: woodworking, farming, sewing. The superintendent of the DC schools said black kids were incapable of taking the same classical studies as the students in the white high schools. And I want to read you something that the black literary scholar Mary Helen Washington said. This was in her introduction to the Oxford University Press edition of A Voice from the South. She said, "If you could smell or feel in any way sense the aura of DC in those days, you would know that it only took her daring to have her students accepted and given scholarships at Ivy League schools to know that the white power structure would be out to get her for any reason or for no reason. It was pure heresy to think that a colored child could do what a white child could. I well remember a year when I was in the 4th grade and Bill Hassel in the 8th, when the Board of Education decided to check the reading competency of DC students. All schools were told to select their best 4th grade and 8th grade readers and send them to a special board meeting. Bill and I were told to read until we were stopped, and naively did so. I was told later I didn't miss a word until I got to the 12th grade level. Heaven only knows how far Bill went, but the board never held that test again. My great-grandfather was on the board at the time, so the story became a family legend. I cite it to you only to show you what resentment existed in the city whenever the Negro children succeeded in any way or surpassed the whites." Anna Julia Cooper refused to change the curriculum, and the district brought charges of insubordination. There was years of investigation. The school board never produced any proof of allegations, but they dismissed her anyway. In 1914, while in her 50s, she began studying for her PhD at Columbia. She eventually transferred her credits to the Sorbonne in Paris and got her doctorate years later. She was only the 4th black woman in U.S. history to do that. And then she became president of a university that was created to provide higher education to low-income students, and she was there for 20 years. She died of heart failure at the age of 105 in D.C. and is buried in Raleigh. She is, by the way, the only black woman to be quoted in the U.S. passport. On pages 24 and 25, you'll see the quotation: "The cause of freedom is not the cause of a race or a sect, a party or a class. It is the cause of humankind, the very birthright of humanity." That's Anna Julia Cooper. She also said, "The black woman of today stands mute and wondering at the Herculean task devolving upon her, but the cycles wait for her. No other hand can move the leather. She must be loosed from her bands and set to work." And one final, probably one of the most famous things she ever wrote, she said, "Only the black woman can say when and where I enter in the quiet, undisputed dignity of my womanhood, without violence and without suing or special patronage. Then and there, the whole Negro race enters with me." Anna Julia Cooper, another badass black woman. Have a good day and be kind.